For the hash and pot smokers of the West, Kathmandu offers a first-class service.
America's public enemy number one is drug abuse. This will be a worldwide offensive.
Whether it's mountaineering or marijuana, trekking to Everest or tripping on LSD, getting as high as you can has always been central to the Nepal tourist experience. This is the story of an American president who tried to nip communism in the bud by destroying a Himalayan hippie Shangri-La. But in stopping the smokers, he sparked a Maoist blowback.
Towards the end of the 60s, youth started leaving their countries in search of places which were remote, exotic, and something like the Shangri-Las that could trigger their imagination and so on. So Kathmandu had become famous for that. One reason for Kathmandu being famous outside Nepal is that people could smoke gaza freely in this country.
On a la liberté, l'amour.
The Hippie Trail followed the footsteps of the ancient Silk Road. But instead of trading textiles, its travelers swapped the post-war social conformity of the Western world for dreams of enlightenment in the East. Some were fleeing the Vietnam War draft, while others came to find themselves. For whatever reason, every year from 1965 to 1973, tens of thousands of young people bust or hitchhiked the overland route from Istanbul to Kathmandu. And the terminus of the Hippie Trail was a single bustling urban lane called Joche, rechristened by its new inhabitants as Freak Street.
There's a flood of young people from the West wearing all kinds of dresses, very picturesque, very dramatic. They fill the streets actually. And they all went to Joche. Why? Because there were small shops where they could buy gaza. And people started setting up restaurants all around. They brought books, they brought the possibility of opening contacts with the world outside. And they came with the music. Jimi Hendrix music, Van Morrison's music. Bob Dylan was introduced by the hippies. How many roads must a man walk down? This became very famous in Kathmandu. Why did the king allow the hippies to come here? I am still surprised. The king had restrictions on everything, but they allowed the hippies to come here. He allowed them to move freely, smoke gaza, until the pressure came from the American government itself and they banned the free selling and smoking of gaza at that time.
They came down from Nepal to demonstrate against you.
They're in Nepal.
Because up there they can get free pot, or at least it's legal.
You see, homosexuality, though immorality in general, these are the enemies of strong societies. That's why the communists and the left-wingers are pushing each other. They're trying to destroy us.
America's public enemy number one in the United States is drug abuse. This will be a worldwide offensive dealing with the problems of sources of supply as well as Americans who may be stationed abroad wherever they are in the world. A number of young Americans have become addicts as they serve abroad, whether in Vietnam or Europe or other places.
Many youths who resisted the compulsory military service in the States, they also came here. But after the Nepali government finally put an end to the free selling and smoking of gaza, they destroyed the crops. The police destroyed so many gaza farms. So they were very angry about that matter. Youths, the hippies were very angry. They lived in large numbers and I was very sad when I said goodbye to them. They were friends after all.
Whether or not these young men are tuned in, they've certainly dropped out of the society they knew. Together they've quietly rejected the practical Western world and seem not at all sure that they'll ever want to return.
The hippies weren't the only ones angered by prohibition. In western Nepal, far from the capital city of Kathmandu, hashish cultivation was the primary source of income. Sellers and growers were arrested. Private property with marijuana growing on it was forfeited to the state. The destruction of the marijuana crops pushed tens of thousands of subsistence farmers to the brink of starvation. Seeing political opportunity in economic collapse, the Communist Party exploited local grievances and persuaded residents that only a violent overthrow of the government would solve their problems.
Each respecting the other.
Nixon's global war on drugs was fueling the communist ideology he was trying to contain.
And we will never surrender our friends to communist aggression.
By the Just Say No Reagan era, drug prohibition had opened new opportunities for corruption that led all the way to Nepal's royal family.
King Bayendra and I have each discovered a new friend.
A blockbuster report by Nepalese journalist Padam Thakurati implicated the king's brothers in Nepal's booming heroin trade. The government immediately shut down Thakurati's newspaper. Then, at 3 o'clock in the morning, a bodyguard of the royal family entered Thakurati's home and aimed a gun 18 inches from his head. Shot in the face, Thakurati survived the attack. He lost an eye, but lived to expose the royal family's involvement in black market heroin.
This is a quick escape from grim reality.
Today, Nepal remains a thriving hub for heroin and hashish, with stories of drug busts, addiction and violence, mainstays of Nepal's television news coverage. By 2006, the Maoists controlled 80% of the country. The insurgency based in Rolpa and Rukam had grown into a national political force that paralyzed the nation with a series of national strikes and armed resistance to the king. After a decade-long civil war that claimed 17,000 lives, Nepal's monarchy was abolished and the communists elected to power.
The Maoists have surged ahead, past both the mainstream left party, the UML, as well as the Nepali Congress.
Today, Nepal's political situation has calmed down, and Freak Street is looking a little bit lonely. Kathmandu's hippie past is running high on nostalgia and low on foot traffic. The erstwhile hippie haven is now a hangout for hipsters. Artisanal coffee shops outnumber head shops. And the old Eden Hashish Center is just an ordinary budget hotel.
Narcotics, अर्थात लागू औषधों पर्ने गांजा.
Despite a small political movement to legalize hashish, marijuana is legal 1 day a year, for religious purposes only. The rest of the time, tourists and locals take their chances on the black market. With its wild days behind it, Freak Street has mostly dropped the drug trade and reinvented itself as a destination for mountain trekking.
The hippies had become the memories of the past. Jose is a memory lane.
These days, the real action is in Tamil. A short walk from Freak Street, Kathmandu's thumping nightlife hotspot offers visitors every kind of indulgence that was available during Freak Street's heyday, and many more that the hippies couldn't have imagined on their wildest trip. And a recent retro hit is reviving Kathmandu's hippie heritage.
The hippies opened tourism in Nepal. That was the movement that brought people of the West and then established a link through love and respect. They respected the culture, they loved the culture. That's something that today's world needs. When the hippies came, other people came to know about Nepal. It was became a surrogate Shangri-La.